We're very, very concerned because this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell.
What's changed since the last person I talked to?
There's a body. There's a body.
There's a body inside?
Yeah.
A killer on the loose this morning in Ohio. A dentist and his wife found dead inside their home with their 2 young children inside. So who possibly could have done this? Plus, killer Bryan Kohberger's sister breaking her silence. Her interview with the New York Times is trending this morning. And defendant Nick Reiner is expected to be back in court this week to have his arraignment. We'll talk about that and what we know about the murder of his parents. And we turn to Arizona for the tortured daughter murder case of Rebecca Baptiste. Police issue a shocking report and a claim that the 10-year-old came forward a year before she died. It's all coming up next to you right here on Opening Statements. Good Monday morning to you and Happy New Year. I'm Julie Grant and this is Opening Statements. It is great to have you along with us. We hope you had a wonderful holiday. We are ready to kick off a big 2026 here at Court TV. So we're going to start it off this morning on this program, as we always do, by having you grab that cup of coffee. It's time for my opening statement. Is she a dangerous little psychopath, or is the real killer still on the loose? Teenage defendant Sarah Grace Patrick is going to trial. In fact, they're picking the jury this morning. The now 17-year-old is accused of murdering her mom, Kristen Brock, and her stepfather, Jamie Brock. Now, the murders happened last February. Kristen and Jamie were killed. Somebody shot them in their sleep. Both of them shot multiple times, according to police. And we understand that her 5-year-old baby sister was the one who found her parents dead. We know Sarah Grace placed the 911 call. We know Sarah Grace gave the eulogy at their funeral. And then she took to TikTok to seemingly drum up some support for herself. Police believe this was all part of the plan to cover her tracks. Now, if police are right, then is she a murdering psychopath who just happens to be living in the body of a cute little teenager? Or if police are wrong, is she a victim here, losing her parents at somebody else's hands? Did an intruder go inside the home somehow and commit those murders? We'll see what the evidence shows. This morning, I will say this. If Sarah Grace Patrick did these murders, it is a crying shame that her baby sister will be put through even more trauma with this trial. That poor child already has to live with the pain of finding her mom and dad murdered. But now she could potentially be called as a witness as well. That is unspeakable, and she is in my prayers. Let's hope that justice and truth will prevail at this trial. Because if Sarah Grace has a secret, violent side to her, she needs to be behind bars. That's my opening statement on this Monday morning. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
I just can't imagine, the accuracy that gun had in her hands. I don't think it could happen. I just don't think physically she could do it.
In Georgia, the case I was just talking about, jury selection beginning today for defendant Sarah Grace Patrick. No cameras are allowed to film until the opening statements begin. So, my friends, that's either going to be later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. We'll keep you posted. In Texas, jury selection also begins for the Uvalde school massacre case. Defendant and former school police officer Adrian Gonzalez is accused of placing more than 24 children in danger by allegedly failing to respond to that shooting. And in Ohio, we've got the sentencing for Frederick Reiner getting underway at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. He pleaded guilty last month to involuntary manslaughter involving his girlfriend, Amanda Dean. Now, her body went missing 8 years ago, and sadly, she has never been found. Right now, let's turn to your top story as a killer is on the loose in Ohio. Police in Columbus searching for whomever killed a respected dentist and his wife. Dr. Spencer Tepe and his wife Monique were shot to death in their home while their 2 young kids were inside.
What's the emergency there, police or medical?
Maybe both, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of doing the
We
wellness.
had a call out there. They knocked on the front door and back door multiple times, and there was no answer.
Yeah, no answer. I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell, but we can't get in. At this point, I don't know if I need to break the door in or just get in the house or what. So.
Okay, were you out there when the police was out there?
I wasn't. I just got here about 5 minutes ago.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll send them back out to you.
Officers discovering the couple's bodies Tuesday after a welfare check was requested by colleagues of Dr. Tepe's. Now, the children were found in the house unharmed. Thank goodness for that. Investigators say there were no signs of forced entry at the house, and there was no weapon at the scene, no firearms. So investigators have ruled out the possibility that this was a murder-suicide. The concern began when Dr. Spencer Tepe missed work for the first time that morning, apparently. His colleagues becoming concerned, calling 911. Moments later, a friend arrives at the house and discovered the gruesome scene.
The body, our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just did a wellness check. We just came here, and he appears dead.
Okay.
There's blood. He's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, and there's blood. I can't get closer to see more than that.
Okay, so you can tell he's obviously not breathing or anything?
Yeah.
Is it like kind of like you know, does he look like...
It doesn't look puddled. I can't look.
Okay, all right, I understand. Okay.
So what happened here? No items taken from the home, no signs of forced entry, no firearm in the house. Let's dig into this. Who might have done these murders? Let's bring in former FBI special agent. She's retired after many years of service. Jennifer Coffin-Daffer. She's also a firearms expert and has expertise in the area of gangs as well. Also want to welcome in private investigator with Black Ops Private Investigators. He's formerly served with the NYPD and our military, Manuel Gomez. Good morning and Happy New Year to you both. I'm so thrilled that we have you both here to dig into this one. Jen, I'll begin with you. Your thoughts when we think about where this investigation should go and who you would want to be interviewing, how you would work this case. Talk to us about that, if you would, please.
Right, Julie. Well, when you look at this case, there are some things that really stand out. First of all, the fact there was no entry, forced entry, no items stolen. There was no indication that anything was toppled or there were any issues. So that tells me that likely this is somebody that this couple would have known. Also, if you look at the preciseness and accuracy of the shots, you have 2 shots to him, 1 shot to her. Also, there was a combination lock on that door. This would lead me to wonder who had access to that combination lock. I found it very interesting that the wedding that they had was at this home. That would mean possibly many people had access to that combination lock. In addition, that 911 call, Julie, that originated sort of strangely in my view. Who calls 911 when your employee just doesn't show up for work for a few hours? I found that a little bit odd as well. So I would start with all of those witnesses and individuals that knew this couple.
Jen, all excellent points. I want to dovetail from your last point. We have that 911 call. So the owner of the dental practice, what Jen was just referencing, he's based in Florida, and he's placing this 911 call at 9 a.m. Tuesday morning. Let's listen.
Did you receive information that they may have been involved in an accident, or?
No, ma'am. I just know that he is he is always on time, and he would contact us if there is any issues whatsoever. And I just don't know how else to say this. We're very, very concerned because this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
Okay, again, 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I looked up that dentist's website for the practice hours, and it says on Tuesdays, They begin at 8 a.m. There are other dentists in the practice as well. Manuel, what do you say about this? Is that suspicious to you that there were calls of such grave concern at 9 a.m. requesting the welfare check so early?
Well, first of all, I want to say my condolences to the Tepe family and to all the family that have lost their loved ones here. Second of all, I do agree with Jennifer, and that is that the boss, to me, is a possible suspect. But what's even more of a possible suspect is the second caller who goes there and describes the puddling of the blood, the body on the floor, and so forth. Clearly, this was a targeted murder. Clearly, the aggression was mostly spent at the husband. This is why he has numerous shots in his body. But the reason why the wife was killed was most likely they didn't mean to kill her, but they came downstairs, saw her, and says, all right, shoot her in the chest, and that's it. The children are alive because of the innocence and because they're really not witnesses. But do I believe that the possible suspects are possible that boss or possible that person that was describing the bodies on the floor after the cops already been there? Highly suspicious. But this case is going to go on the digital footprint, and that's what's going to take to bust open this case and who it was.
Definitely. Great points, Manuel. So, to your point, the digital footprint. So let's just say, as an investigator, and it sounds like you both would like to interview these people who were very active that morning, calling concerned, going to the house. Jen, talk to us, please, about how you go about that. Do you ask these people if they'll willingly turn over their devices and their communications?
Well, I would first start, of course, with the deceased devices and communications. Also, I want to see all this video. There's a Ring camera. We know there's a public camera across the street. I would believe that there are multiple Ring cameras in this neighborhood. This neighborhood, by the way, is very interesting because it's in really a bad part of town that they're trying to revive. So this house was a $700,000 townhome, but essentially it's surrounded by a really bad neighborhood. So a lot of cameras and so on are going to be there. As far as interviewing these possible witnesses, possible suspects, that is really ground one for me. I'm going to go there and in person interview them and ask if they'll take polygraphs and ask if they'll give up their devices. You can tell a lot by what people will and will not do.
Yes, Jen. So let's explore another possibility that this might have been someone looking to do a crime there, whether it's they intend to go in and burglarize the home, they intend to just do a killing, maybe per gang initiation, something like that. Manuel, what do you say about that? Do you think it's possible this could have been more random than personal?
I think it's possible, but highly unlikely. And the fact that you said before, they didn't steal anything. They didn't take nothing from the house, okay? This was a targeted murder. This was targeted to that husband. And I have to say to you, this is a very good-looking couple. She's a beautiful woman. He's a handsome guy, okay? Either one of them might have had some type of affair or somebody who liked them. Like Jennifer said, this house has digital locks on the door, which you don't need a key. All you just need is the digital combination. And the fact is, not only did it have a Ring camera in front of the house, which covers about a 70-degree angle, but it also has cameras in back. When I saw the backyard, I saw 2 Ring cameras in the back. This house is fairly new, so the modernization of the equipment with it is going to be key in this investigation. But I do believe that there is someone that they know that was possibly in a relationship and so forth. And like Jennifer said, I would start with those 2 key individuals. Why do you call? Because somebody misses 1 day of work? I have a problem with that.
Yeah, I hear you, my friend. Jen, last point from you, please. You have done service work with the FBI, infiltrating gangs. You've studied them. Does this look at all like gang activity to you?
Capital, no. No, not in the least. Typically, when you see some sort of gang activity like this that would either be for the purpose of robbing or for the purpose of a gang initiation, you see a spray and pray tactic. You would see so much damage. You would see items stolen and taken from that residence. They just don't have the understanding to be low profile in what they do. This is a low profile murder, meaning the person who went in there has minimally some expertise with their weapon to hit kill shots right away. And they were able to get in and get out without being identifiable. I would guess that they're going to be totally covered up. And that's why police are asking for more camera footage.
Excellent insight from you both. Jennifer Coffindaffer, Manuel Gomez, thank you both tremendously. And for anybody who's watching this program, if you live in Central Ohio, please call Crime Stoppers. We're putting the number on your screen. They're looking for any information they can get to try to solve this heinous crime. Those children, the 1-year-old and the 4-year-old, are in the hands of the couple's brother-in-law this morning. So they are with family, and we certainly wish them all the best. We're going to hit a break. Coming up next here on Opening Statements.
Defendant entered the residence, went to the 3rd floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan and Caitlin Gonzalez. He encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well.
Killer Kohberger's sister is speaking out. We're breaking down the biggest takeaways from her interview, like how much did she actually know? Plus, we're spotlighting the Reiner family murders as defendant Nick Reiner gets set for his arraignment. Our legal eagles are here to weigh in.
If the defendant can kill her own parents, I'll fear for my own safety.
A shocking double homicide rocking a small Georgia community.
The teen daughter makes the call to 911. She's the accused killer now.
Mountains of physical and digital evidence.
Everything seems circumstantial.
They haven't found the murder weapon.
Why would she hurt everyone like this?
The deadly teen daughter trial. Live coverage this week following jury selection on Court TV.
He is a hollow vessel, something less than human. A body without empathy, without remorse. He chose destruction. He chose evil.
The Idaho student murders case is trending this morning as Bryan Kohberger's sister is breaking her silence in an exclusive interview with the New York Times. For over 3 years, the Kohberger family has kept quiet. They avoided interviews, even as Bryan Kohberger pleaded guilty and accepted 4 life sentences for his crimes. Well, now his sister Mel is describing her family's reaction to finding out that her brother is a murderer. Here, detailing the moment, her sister Amanda told her that the FBI took Bryan into custody, which she wondered if it was a prank at first before realizing the truth, then describing a sense of nausea that overcame her. On speculation whether her family had known all along that Bryan was a killer, she says, quote, "I have always been a person who has spoken up for what was right. If I ever had a reason to believe my brother did anything wrong, I would have turned him in." This morning, we're asking, did the Kohberger family know that Bryan was a killer? Let's bring in criminology expert, author, and professor at St. Thomas University, Dr. Debbie Goodman. Happy New Year, my friend. Good to see you. Oh, this case, I know it has broken your heart since it happened. These families still grieving, and now they get to hear something from the Kohberger family. And this sister, Mel, who's speaking out. Dr. Debbie, I know you read the article over and over again. What are your thoughts hearing her speak about this and speak about what she says was not knowing, being stunned, and feeling victimized by many in the true crime community?
Yes, good morning, Julie. Thank you and Happy New Year. I believe the sister Julie. I think that The siblings did not know, and here's why. Because Bryan Kohberger is a psychopathic killer. And again, what does that mean? What are those traits, those qualities, those characteristics? He's manipulative, he's deceptive, he's a pathological liar. So I'm sure the sisters thought that, yes, their brother is odd, he displays bizarre conduct. But Julie, when we, look at the history of these serial killers and the impact on family, the first person that came to mind in this context is BTK, Dennis Rader, bind, torture, kill, convicted of 10 murders. But when his daughter, Kerry Rawson, was interviewed, she was absolutely blindsided, Julie. She described her father as being very devoted, a doting, loving father. And then we go to Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway, the Green River killer, his son Matthew said that his father, who was convicted of 49 murders, never missed a thing, never missed any school activity. So I do think that in some way, these families were, not aware of the depths and destruction of this individual. So I don't think the sisters knew. Now, is it possible that the parents knew? I think that's more of a possibility, that within the 6-week window that he left Idaho going home to Pennsylvania from November until his arrest, December 30th, is it possible mom and dad knew? I think that's a greater possibility.
Dr. Debbie, great insight. Digging into the sister's perspective, when I was reading this, I felt for her, and I thought of you because you and I had multiple conversations on this show throughout the progression of that case about all of the victims, and you would talk about, and you do it with many cases for us, primary victims, tertiary victims, how it's wild just how many lives can be devastated by one criminal, members of their own family, and it sounds like, look, they're not immune, they're people too. She didn't do this, she had nothing to do with this, but yet being abused, by people online and in the public sphere must have been really tough. Would you speak to that, please, in the true crime community and perhaps the need for more sensitivity for everyone?
Right, you're 100% right, Julie. So here's what we know about murder. People take sides, and usually the sides are very emotional, and we'll just talk about two. It's love versus hate. Who do we love? We will forever love the victims, Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, Zaina, and why we didn't know them directly, but we have such compassion for them, for their families. It will always be so shocking, so devastating to us. And then what's the other side of the coin? Hate. Who do we hate? Bryan Kohberger, the killer. But Julie, in criminology, as you spoke about the 3 levels, the primary, secondary, tertiary, but we also have a theory that's called differential association theory. And how we interpret that is the different people with whom the killer is associated, and primarily the family. We won't say people hate them, but perhaps they become these sisters and the parents villainized, that people still hold them with disfavor and disregard. But yes, that becomes a very heavy load for them to have to deal with the stigma for the rest of their lives as well.
Definitely. A helpful explainer, Dr. Debbie, you're right. I mean, we see it all the time. People want to, like you said, they want to take sides as soon as the case starts. And, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. And this sister is a great example of someone who is not condoning any of it. Is disgusted, appalled by it. She can't help that she's related to him. That's not going to change. I wanted to share with you some more things that were said in this interview. For anyone who hasn't read this article, you can read the whole thing again. The New York Times got this exclusive interview with Mel Kohberger. Here's some things we extracted. So friends described how Bryan had been overweight as a teenager and was standoffish. He also endured persistent bullying. His sister never saw him ever be violent. She said he was abrasive, yes, but never violent. The lack of the violent history was one of the reasons why the family found it so disorienting that Bryan was even just accused of the crimes that he ended up pleading to. And in the days before the raid at the Kohberger house, Mel's mom had cut her finger, and she saw that Bryan initially looked, disgusted at the sight of blood, but then helped clean the cut and cover it up with a bandage. So seeming to be squeamish and then persisting through it to cover it with a Band-Aid and be gentle with his mom. Dr. Debbie, what stands out the most to you from some of these takeaways?
Right. Well, again, I do think the sister is speaking with sincerity, Julie. I would have no reason to doubt her and the families. Yes, as a residual effect, they too are victimized. But if we just keep, center stage here on who this individual is and what he is, the psychopath is so about lying and deceiving that even among one's own family members, they simply don't know. It's as if they're hiding in plain view. There they are. There he is. He's this doctoral student. He goes to work. He's seemingly interacting in society. And then there's this asterisk by that statement. And then there's this whole other side to these people, Julie. And the same thing with Dennis Rader and Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer and anybody we would want to name who's come before this individual. They hide in plain view.
Oh. Chilling and fascinating insight from you as always. Dr. Debbie Goodman, thank you kindly. We'll hit a break. Still to come here on Opening Statements.
Rob Reiner was a brilliant actor and director. His wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, was an equally iconic photographer and producer. These charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty.
What we can expect when Nick Reiner is back in court for his arraignment. Plus, little Rebecca Baptiste, allegedly tortured by her father and his girlfriend. And here's the kicker. Little Rebecca reported abuse to police a year before she died. We'll unpack this case when we come back.
Upon entering the residence, they discovered the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Reiner. Detectives from our Robbery Homicide Division Homicide Special Section immediately initiated a comprehensive investigation. The evidence gathered led to the arrest of their son, Nick Reiner, who was taken into custody later that night without incident in the Exposition Park section of our city.
Because at the appropriate time, the actual evidence involved in this case will be presented in a court of law.
Now to a case that has everybody in Hollywood talking. Nick Reiner due back in court this week, accused of stabbing his parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner, to death. The 32-year-old is set to be arraigned on murder charges stemming from the shocking attack at his parents' Brentwood home that police say he carried out. He's expected to be in court on Wednesday, January the 7th. This comes on the heels of recent reports of his change in medication for schizophrenia. It's unclear whether that medication was changed or how this could play a role in the case. We'll soon find out together. In the meantime, our Cody Thomas visited a key point in the investigation, which was a stop on Nick Reiner's path before he was taken into custody.
So I'm standing across from the Pierside Hotel in Santa Monica. Now, what's important about this hotel? Well, now it's doubling as a second crime scene in this case against Nick Reiner. Of course, we know the crime scene in the Brentwood home, but this is where police say Nick Reiner checked in to this hotel at 4 a.m. on Sunday, allegedly following those murders. And police also say once they arrived to his room inside, once they gained access, they saw blood all throughout the shower and they saw bed sheets covering the windows. Now remember, this is not exactly where Nick Reiner got arrested. He got arrested in Exposition Park, but again, this is where police say he checked into after those alleged murders, and with all that blood evidence they say they saw, no doubt that this place will play a crucial part as this case and investigation continues to unfold.
All right, Cody Thomas reporting for us. Now let's bring in our legal eagles and talk about what we can expect to happen on Wednesday the 7th when Nick Reiner appears for his arraignment. Let's bring in former homicide prosecutor Rick Grundy and celebrity attorney and professor Randy Kessler. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Happy New Year to you both. Great to have you on this one. Hearts are aching all over. Rob Reiner, so beloved. People are stunned and amazed that his son could potentially be the killer here. We'll see what the evidence shows. But at the arraignment, Rick Grundy, I'll go to you first here, please. What can we expect to happen on Wednesday?
So I think what we'll see is pretty mundane. It will be entrance of a not guilty plea. Clearly, the defense has already taken movement towards a defense of lack of criminal responsibility. And I doubt that they will put that on the record at this point in time. It's too early. They're going to want to have more background done, more investigation, medical and otherwise, into the defendant before they commit to a direct direction of that particular defense. I think one thing that's important to note here from what we've heard is there is a difference between mental health and drug addiction. And is there a crossover there frequently? Yes, there is. But at this point in time, that really hasn't been established with respect to this person. What we've heard primarily is drug addiction. My understanding with respect to this recent diagnosis of schizophrenia is that it happened as close to the crimes as within a week, and medication for that began in that same period of time. Most mental health medication takes some time to take changes in that person. I would be surprised if that really was the main factor in this. So I think what we have to realize that this is not, as he's been classified by some, a troubled youth. This is a 32-year-old adult with a long history of drug addiction.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Rick. This is just, it's awful. Court TV interviewed the senior investigative reporter with the Daily Mail. Her name is Dana Kennedy, and she's talking about some new reporting that one of the other Reiner children was present at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party. We'll play the clip, and Randy, I'll come to you on the other side.
I understand that Nick's sister Romy was there, Romy Reiner, who's his younger sister. And of course, in so many families, when you have a problem child, the other kids, kind of get short shrift. So it hasn't even come out yet that she was there, but that's my understanding. And yes, I have another source who knew someone that was there and said that he was acting really strangely all night. And the fact that Conan O'Brien didn't want to call the police is kind of aligns with who Conan O'Brien is, who's truly one of the nicest guys in Hollywood, one of the most scandal-free guys in Hollywood. The same can be said for Bill Hader. I don't know Bill Hader personally, but I know someone who does, and said he already has a lot of anxiety issues, and this is really, really tearing him up because,
speaking of tearing up this family, these children. So 4 children belonging to Rob Reiner in total. He has a daughter, Tracy, who's his adopted daughter from his first marriage to Penny Marshall, and then 3 children with his wife, Michelle, Jake, Nick, and Romy, who was just being spoken about at Conan's party. Randy Kessler, I want to ask you to weigh in on this, please. How you see these coming months going for these family members in terms of interviews, statements, therapy, what you see for them as they navigate what's ahead?
Oh my gosh, it's piling on. I couldn't imagine, right? You think there are 2 ways to handle a brother, a sister, a son, a family member that's in this position, and they did everything they could. They surrounded him with love. They gave him treatment. They threw money at it, and it didn't work. And the whole world's going to be saying, well, why didn't you report him? Why didn't you send the police to the party to take him out? And I think they handled it the right way, right? It's the way I would hope my family would handle it if it was me or somebody that I loved. And now they're going to regret that, and they're going to be going through therapy after therapy. It's just a terrible family situation. just goes to show you, it doesn't matter how rich, how successful, how wealthy you are, everybody can succumb to these issues, whether it's mental illness or drug addiction. You know, you do everything you can. Sometimes you just can't stop it. And this may be one of those situations.
Randy, yeah, you're right. Rick, back to you. In terms of the defense that you think we're going to see, I would love your projection on that, please.
Well, in order to fit into that rather tight category, remember, when we talk about mental health and criminality, we're talking about something other than what we normally think of as insanity. In this case, they're going to have to establish either that he didn't appreciate the wrongfulness of his actions, or more likely the tact would be that he could not control himself. He was not of a well enough mind to control his actions, which would qualify him for a mental health defense. And I think that's the tact we'll see.
Not guilty by reason of insanity is what you think they're probably going to pursue. Yeah. We'll see what happens on Wednesday. Of course, we'll be reporting any updates. Great insight from you both. Randy, Rick, stick around, please. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, here's what we have coming up next for you here on Opening Statement.
Both of her arms were bruised. There was large abrasions starting from her bicep, traveling all the way down to her hands. There was large abrasions on her midsection that went horizontally from her midsection to her back.
We're talking about the heartbreaking abuse of little Rebecca Baptiste. The new report police revealed in the months before she died. Could it tip the scales of justice? We'll talk about it next.
This week,
we kick off the year with an in-depth look at the country's biggest trials and true crime investigations for 2026.
Opening Statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
The school shooting that broke hearts around the country
and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde School Massacre Trial. Live coverage this week on Court TV.
Welcome back. Now for what's tipping the scales of justice. New reports show that a little girl told police that she was being abused and tortured by her father and his girlfriend, only to be returned to them. 9 months later, 10-year-old Rebecca Baptiste, this little angel you see here, was found on the side of an Arizona road, beaten and starving. She later died from her injuries. Police reports indicate that she had escaped her father's apartment once when she was 9 years old, and she ran to a gas station. She tried to get help from a homeless person and a gas station employee. Police and Child Protective Services got involved, but then they sent her back to her father, Richard Baptiste, and his girlfriend because of some conflicting stories they say that the child was telling. Here's some body camera footage right after Rebecca was found.
And she's been running away for the last 3 or 4 weeks since we've been here. She ran away this morning. We went out and tried to find her, and our neighbor found her. Like she was just breathing on her own.
Breathing on her own?
But that was about it. And then as we were driving this way, started seeing color change in her lips, and we were just hauling it.
Walk me through what happened today.
We were outside starting the morning. Before I can get waters in the bottles, she went running off again.
So both Richard Baptiste and Anisha Woods are charged with first-degree murder, with aggravated assault, with child abuse, and kidnapping. They're going to be in court this month. Their trials are scheduled for June. This case makes me nauseated. Let's talk about how badly this child was failed. Let's bring in Randy Kessler and Rick Grundy for some insight. Randy, I want to begin with you here, please. Your thoughts hearing that this child actually had the wherewithal to report that she was being abused at 9 years old, only to be sent back to the home to be clearly abused some more, and then is killed.
It's so upsetting. I mean, usually I'm the one defending, to some degree, CPS, Child Protective Services. They're always underpaid, underfunded, overworked. You know, they can't win, right? If the parent loses a child and the parent's innocent and they take the child away, then the parents and the child suffer. So, you know, how do you solve this? And I always want to give a little bit of leeway, But this was so over the top, so many signs, so many indicators. The fact that nobody caught it, even if the system didn't work, somebody in the system doesn't have to follow orders. You can say this one is an anomaly. There were so many signs. What a tragedy. I mean, all these cases are tragic. This was, near the top of the list of all the ones that we've covered together.
Yeah, Randy, you're so right. I want to show you what Rebecca told police. Said that Anisha Woods, her stepmom, would make her run laps as punishment, would hit her with a belt on her feet, would hit her hands with a brush. So that's what she said when she made that report about a year before her death. When she was found unresponsive, the injuries noted were injuries of physical trauma, an apparent beating. Sexual abuse was noted. She was very malnourished. She had damaged, missing toenails and burn marks on her back that looked to be consistent with cigarette burns, according to police. And one doctor described her injuries as torture. Rick Grundy, talk to me, please, about this prosecution and what you think is appropriate for these parents.
Well, unfortunately, we're again here discussing the same thing that we were last week with the arraignment of Miss Buzzard for the death of her daughter, Melody, not far removed from the horrifying trial for the death of Harmony Montgomery in New Hampshire. We see this throughout the country. I echo Randy's feelings with respect to the people in child services, but it is a monumental failure across the board and across the nation. The commonality of those three cases is that each of these children and every parental aspect they had in their life was under the investigation of those that are charged with protecting these children. It is not the individuals within the child services that are responsible for this. It is the system itself. It's the legislators, it's the judiciary that put these children back in control of these parents with little oversight by a underfunded, undermanned system. And my feeling with respect to these is you go after, it's a first-degree murder of the most atrocious manner possible to a truly defenseless individual. Max them out.
Yes, yes, Rick. Randy, I think what breaks my heart so badly with this one, and believe me, my heart's breaking for all these kids in these cases. You noted a few of them, Rick, that are near and dear to my heart as well. This child managed to escape. It kind of made me think of Ruby Frankie's son who escaped, and that was how the whole house of cards came down. This child got out. I think that's what kills me. What do you say about that aspect of this, Randy?
I couldn't agree more, right? You finally have a child who has the courage, the determination to climb through a window, to get out, to tell somebody, despite the threats that if you tell anybody, she was threatened that if she told anybody what was happening, they would punish her, that she did that, and it didn't work. I mean, that's the 1 in a million that gets out and saves herself and becomes a spokesperson and an advocate for all other children like that as she grows up. Didn't have that chance. She could have been a shining light. She could have been an example, should have been, of how to handle it, how to get out, and how to fix it. And, Good Samaritans aside, at least the lady in the QT station called the police. I don't know who dropped the ball. The police, CPS, seemed like everybody dropped the ball on this poor little girl.
Mm-hmm. And Randy, appreciate you pointing out that bright spot that, God bless that gas station worker, the homeless person, the people that tried to help her when she was clearly in distress and made the call. And, at that point, what more can they do? Nothing. They make the call, you report it, and we'll see what happens as the evidence comes out as to where the ball was dropped, by whom it was dropped, this poor child. Rick, quickly, I just have about 30 seconds. You think these two are going to stay co-defendants, or you think somebody might roll on somebody?
That's always a tough call. My guess, I guess, maybe somewhat of an educated guess, is somebody's going to roll on somebody else. I think from what I've heard, the mother seems to be the more aggressive person in the matter, but we'll see how it plays out.
Exactly. Excellent insight from you both. As per usual, Rick Grundy, Randy Kessler, thank you both so much. We're going to hit a break, friends. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements. First episode of the show for the new year.